You're listening to Drinks and a Movie with your host, Rudy. Spoiler alert.
Rolling Drinks and a Movie podcast. Yo, everyone. I'm back with co-host Matt.
Back again.
And tonight...
It's only been 30 seconds, folks. We just finished recording another episode. But we'll act like it's been weeks. I don't know, whatever. Sorry.
Just finished the Memories of
Go
Murder.
for it, man.
So we're already 2 pours deep, or 3, I guess.
This is going to be the good episode.
Yeah. But tonight we're going to be talking about Infernal Affairs from 2002, starring Andy Lau and Tony Leung. And if you know anything about this movie, The Departed, Martin Scorsese's film, that of all the movies he's done, won him the Oscar.
Yeah, go figure.
Just so happens to be a remake of this movie. And a part of me wanted to talk about both, to do like a double feature episode, but I just don't have time for that right now. I want to get out some other movies. So maybe someday we'll do Departed, but right now we're just going to do Infernal Affairs. But again, spoiler alert as always. And for this, again, on the tip of The Departed, maybe I should have saved this, but even though we're doing Infernal Affairs, The Departed is set in Boston, right? So we're doing, now I feel stupid for not doing Departed.
It's okay, you can do it again.
But we're doing the latest Hardin's Creek, everybody. This is part 3 of their 2023 release of the Kentucky series. This is the Hardin's Creek Boston. So Matt,
dude,
so far you've done the other 2 with me,
and they were awesome. I love them all.
Yeah, you've actually done every single release with me,
and I've been tempted, but they're a little out of my price range sometimes. But goddamn, they're good.
So this is the 5th one total since they've started, but the third release of 2023. So let's go to pour. I did put the neck pour of this in my infinity bottle earlier.
Oh, cool, very cool. Okay.
So it has gotten exposed to air a little bit, so had a little bit of a chance to open up.
When did you pick this up?
On Saturday.
Oh,
because I had to go to the Ramona show.
Oh, there you go.
And I was like, you know what? Let me stop by La Bodega just in case. And they had it.
Did they have more than one bottle? Just curious.
Yeah, they have another one. They still have 2 bottles of the Frankfurt too. If I wasn't broke right now, I'd buy a backup of that one easily.
Me that, man. Okay, maybe.
So, yeah.
This stuff is so good.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
And in case you didn't hear those other episodes, essentially Hardin's Creek. Oh, wait, I got my little booklet in here too. Yeah. So essentially Hardin's Creek
has a great case, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
The box
comes in a nice little tin.
Yeah.
But Hardin's Creek is a premium line from James B. Beam Distilling, Jim Beam. And this year, 2023, what they wanted to showcase was how aging the same bourbon in different locations, different terroir, affects the flavor profile. So the first one they did came out in, I think, June. That was, and they're all the same exact bourbon mash bill. They're all 17 years old. So this is like some good shit, 17-year-old.
So awesome.
The first one was aged in their Claremont location. Okay. The second, which came out, I think, in August, was at Frankfurt. And this one is in their Boston location. So it's all in Kentucky. These are just different campuses. So, but literally all the same juice. So the idea is that you collect all 3 of them, you taste them side by side, and you see how literally the same exact whiskey changes based on the aging location. Wow. But so I'm going to read the little booklet that came with it. So I'll skip this first little page here and just go.
Did this on the last one too, folks. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, got the whole thing. All right. So Kentucky series. Yeah, I guess I'll just read this part again. Here we go. So the Hardin's Creek Kentucky series, set it and let nature take over. A timeless commandment from Booker No, situated at the very heart of this edition. We have long understood that ours are not the sole hands responsible for shaping our whiskeys. Whiskey making is harmony between nature and nurture, the natural conditions that surround us, intuitively blended with our nurturing craft. Our 3 campuses, Claremont, Frankfurt, Boston, are home to unique topographical and environmental conditions. As a bourbon grows old in one of these lands, it's indelibly marked by the nuanced character of the land itself, whether set down at the foot of crest of rolling hills, open to the sun's blaze, or tree shaded and cool, breezed by winds of steadfastly still. Every drop is influenced and oriented by the peculiarities of its environs. Man, fancy.
I'm going to interject just really quick. So this is something that actually came up on the Sagamore Distillery tour, is that one of the big things is when they put it in the barrels, like letting the natural environment do its thing.
Yeah.
Like that's a really important part of the process, which I thought was super interesting. They they choose here, so they're going to let nature do its thing to how it affects the barrels and stuff.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how the location can make such a difference.
Man, no kidding.
So let's see. So Boston, welcome to Boston, the final of 3 special releases within our Kentucky series. Our Book or No campus in Boston, Kentucky is one of a kind. Our rack houses spread out generously in the golden sunshine and clear air, ideal for maturation. Fine ingredients soon become fine bourbon. These unique conditions mean a faster, richer aging process that brings out the nuttiness and woodiness of the whiskey. A dark amber bourbon full of chocolate and caramel with high notes of vanilla and faded hazelnut. It's bold and characterful, much like Booker No himself. Legacy is always in the making. All right.
Of course.
And then we got some notes here. I'll read the notes after. Let's do our first taste though. So, man, here we are. We did it, dude. Part 3.
Part 3. Cheers.
Yeah, smells good. The smell, from what I remember, isn't well. I barely remember the other ones, but it's definitely that sweet oak. So I can tell that it's like an older bourbon. Like that's very clear. I don't smell like the distinct like Jim Beam nuttiness yet. Just like good old sweet oak, man.
Literally
sweet
oak, man. Yeah.
Lots of caramel for sure.
I remember getting a tad of the vanilla the last time I smelled. Now that he just mentioned it, but just a hint. It's not like overpowering.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of caramel. Rich with the caramel right now. Oh, man, that's good. This is something, though, where I can just live in this nose, man. I almost don't even want to sip it yet.
Is that good?
God damn.
Dude, don't sip it. Just hold it.
Yeah, this is where I wish I still had a job and, like, wasn't broke right now because, believe me, I was really tempted to buy, like, a backup of Frankfurt. Like, I would love to have a backup of all of these. All right, here we go. Woo! Whoa!
Apparently a lot just hit Rudy, in case you're wondering. Yeah. That sound you heard.
Oh, man. Wow.
There's so much going on in this thing. So
that is different from the other ones.
It is, man.
I can't wait to do them side by side. Yeah, so first step. So that just got me acclimated. Here we go. Let's do a little. All right, you go first.
Get a little bit of the nutty, almost, I don't want to say pine, because I think that's a little bit too extreme, but definitely getting some nuttiness on the front. But then it goes all the way to the back, and I'm getting the spice, I'm getting the heat. What else do I describe there? It's just, I feel like a full flavor across the whole tongue. I'm getting it front to back on the tongue.
Yeah, I get that.
You don't always get that when you're tasting something. So the fact that it's got this full flavor, and I can still feel the heat right now, it's still going down, which is one thing I really enjoy.
It is a very nice hug.
Oh, such a great
very,
hug, yeah.
very nice, warm, like
super
winter hug from your grandpa.
There's something, what am I missing? There's a flavor in there that I'm not describing very well. You said caramel in the smell, but I'm not getting that in the actual taste itself.
Yeah, it's not, I don't feel like it's that sweet.
No.
On the palate. And I definitely get more of the oak and woodiness on the back.
When I was saying nutty, I think I meant more towards that.
Yeah, but it's not bad. Well, definitely nutty. Like I do get that Jim Beam nuttiness, but not like to a very extreme bit. I almost part of me wants to say mellow, but the other part doesn't. I do agree that it, as soon as it hits my tongue, like just launched all the flavors off. You know what I mean? And like compared to say the Sagamore, right? Like when I talk about how it's light, it's that saying that kind of thing where when it hits the tongue, it takes a second for the flavors to kind of cycle through. This is very immediate.
No, this is all right there. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I would say this is oaky and woody, but it's not like overdone and bad. It is a little bit drying. Like I'm definitely a little tannicky, but
sure.
It's still very tan. It's like wine, right?
Yeah,
like it dries you out a little
almost
bit.
Almost like you
like that kind of bitter, dry. Yeah. My understanding. I could be wrong, but
you're totally right. Definitely feels like I don't guess.
But it's good. That probably is, from what I remember, like the most like woody of them all, but in a good way, because one, like, so Elisha Craig 18, I think is all right, but that's one that seems like too oaky and woody to me, just by a little bit.
Yeah.
I also kind of hate the fact that it's like less than 100 proof. It's like a little, so that makes it kind of light. It feels very diluted, which by the way, all three of these are 110 proof, I think. They're in like a really good spot. Yeah.
And I think that's, in my opinion, that's also what makes Elijah Craig a little more approachable at that.
Yeah.
You know, that it's if you wanted to go for a step up, it's one of those things. The 18 is a little more approachable.
You can tell. So like what I liked about the Elijah Craig 18 is the first time I had it, because I would hear people talk about like the oak and all that. And I was like, well, I don't even No.
Yeah.
But having that was when I was like, okay, this is what that flavor is. So now when I drink other bourbons that are above 10 years old, it's like, okay, I can pick that out. Now there's that oak flavor, that like sweet oak, but this is very well balanced. Well, let's see what the booklet has to say. So color, rich amber with darker tones. Yep.
Definitely agree with that.
Nose, toasted marshmallow, dark chocolate, and slight coconut. I didn't get any of that.
Coconut. I did not get any coconut at all.
I don't get dark chocolate.
By the way, I love coconut, so that would have immediately hit me.
Toasted marshmallow, I can try that. You know what I get a little bit of coconut on sometimes is actually Sagamore Double Oak.
Oh, interesting.
That was the first one where...
Maybe that's why I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm a fan of coconut.
And I didn't realize that till like pretty... I mean, and it depends on what day you catch me, right? Like, or any of us, but...
That's a lot of tasting, actually.
Yeah.
Enough, so.
Yeah, it depends
what have you
on
had to eat
moment.
that day and all those things?
Let's see. Palette. So soft caramel and vanilla with oak tones, faded hazelnut. Finish, sweet baking spices. So I can definitely see the spice.
Yeah, the baking spice for sure.
Soft caramel and vanilla with oak tones and faded hazelnut. I mean, I can definitely oak tones. I'll tell you that. And I guess we'll see. I'll let it. I'm gonna leave this here so I can sip on it as we go.
I would say it's freaking delicious.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah,
and it's just different. Like it doesn't. I mean, I don't drink a ton of Beam, so I'm not as familiar with that one. But damn good.
Yeah. I'm gonna save this last little bit for the conversation. But man, Infernal Affairs, dude. So. Your first time seeing this?
Yeah, so I was very familiar with this film when Departed came out because you couldn't read a review or watch anything without somebody mentioning it's a remake of Infernal Affairs.
See, I wasn't aware of that at the time. I learned it a couple years later.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I was all into cinema at the early 2000s. So like you hit me at like peak. Matt isn't into cinema at this time. I might have saw Departed twice in theaters. I loved it. Big fan of it. Big fan of it. I would have seen it as... Because I didn't discover Scorsese like that I was conscious of until like the late 90s. If he was releasing a film, I was seeing it in theaters, So had that going. And I remember hearing a lot about this film. Watching it nowadays, and I just watched it a few days ago, immediately noticing Tony Leung, who I hard boiled and Hero is just like a film that I just one of my favorites.
A lot of Wong Kar-wai films.
Exactly. Yeah. So an actor I'm very familiar with. Right.
that brought him to the States. Of all the movies, and goddamn, to this man age well,
dude. Holy, he doesn't look. He looks he's got
exactly
a little less gray hair, but that's like it. So
as soon as this one started, I was like thinking about that. I'm like, man, he aged really well.
Son of a bitch. And Departed's a film I've seen a few times, probably 5 or 6 times. I really enjoyed the film. So having those, it's tough not to think about that film when I was watching this one.
Yeah, for sure.
Loved this film from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Gets up and goes and just never stops. Literally, it's one of those films where you're just like, this is going, it's going. It's like everything is important. It just keeps going. And one of the things that I found interesting was you hear filmmakers and people talk about how anytime you include some sort of like technology in your film, it tends to date the film. And while this film does have dated technology, the cell phones, things like that, it didn't age the film for me. There are a couple of moments, and we'll get to it, where I felt like the film was a little bit of product of early 2000s. But except for a couple of few spots, I was just like, man, this film felt timeless and just such a fun ride. I say fun. It's so weird to say fun ride when you got something like you got people getting bumped off and killed and stuff like that. But just super interesting, super fun. Really enjoyed the film. Performances are all great. Really enjoyed it.
Does your reference to some of it seems a little victim of early 2000s refer to editing choices?
Yes. Yeah. Where we had some unnecessary montage moments. And I'm just like, there was
interesting transitions.
Musical
cues.
Some of the musical cues, I'm just like, I look left and right. I'm like, what
why is there a clarinet solo happening right now? They just threw the dude off the building. They're having a shootout. There's a clarinet solo.
Dude, I was like, there was also there was a flashback when the main character was after the dude got thrown off the building. There was a flashback. I'm like, we know why he feels pain. We don't need to see. Him remembering something. So that was probably a victim of well, the audience needs to understand some of these things. We're trying to.
We saw that scene like 10 minutes ago.
Like, what are you doing?
Like I remember that he wrote Bodyguard on the folder. Show me again.
There was just a couple of times like that, but it didn't hurt the enjoyment from the film. I was just like kind of. I also and I'm sure we're gonna get. I'm curious here, but I love the fact that this film just starts like bam, you're right there. Let's go.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that stuff, and for the audience and like. Being a little more deliberate with giving answers. And we just talked Memories of Murder, right?
Right. Where?
Man, talk about like a way different vibe.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from this one, but
totally different.
That is like, that does show a different level of filmmaking and trust in your audience. I must say, like, I still love this one, but that's where you get a film like Memories of Murder that enters masterpiece zone. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Totally.
But no, I agree. Like I watched this back in like maybe right out of high school, like probably like a year or two after I saw the Departed, because that's back when I was going to like I never went to Blockbuster, I went to Hollywood Video, and that's when I was just going down like I was always in the foreign section and like getting that. That's where I saw like all these movies. It's crazy that I didn't see Memories of Murder back then.
I'm surprised I didn't see Infernal Affairs in the theaters. I was seeing a lot of anything that came out. Somehow I missed it. So.
Yeah, and that was the time, and so this was one of them, and I just bought like a box set. So. Right. I remember going to Amoeba buying the box set. So have you seen? You haven't seen the trilogy then?
No. Now I'm going to watch it because I was like, oh, this is cool. They have a whole trilogy.
Yeah. So I watched the whole trilogy.
I guess like, Tony Leung is not in the other.
Oh, he's in both of them.
Oh,
or no, at least the third one. Okay, yeah. Cool. So yeah.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
Yeah. But so I saw them all back then. So probably around like 2008 or so. Really, I liked all three of them for them. I thought the third one was actually pretty decent considering like where it goes. Yeah. But sorry, getting back to your point here, the opening, I really dig it. I dig how you just start with that dude, Sam, who's like, the Jack Nicholson character, the big bad gangster, and just doing this monologue about, this is how we started. This is where we're going. Cheers, officers, you know what I mean? And then we get this montage of like the two guys like coming up in their respective, like you said, it just goes.
Oh man.
A little monologue. All right, boom, let's move.
And it does not slow down for the next 2 hours.
Yeah. I really love that aspect. And that's something I really remember. Like I always remember very clearly them like cheersing and doing their drink. And then it's like a freeze frame on him.
Yeah.
And then that's when you see them like going through freaking
the police training
and police school and all that. And kicking out the other, he's going to be a good undercover cop. They kick him out. Everybody watches, and you're seeing them kind of grow up throughout this montage.
Yeah. Setting up what you're about to go. And I think it really helps clearly establish what you're going to watch, because that part I appreciate that they're making it clear what's happening. That right from the get-go that there is a gangster inside of the police force and that there's a cop inside of the gang. And it's a little tough to watch because I know all of the plot points, because all the big plot points they put is in Departed, like all that stuff. Who's going to get bumped off, all that kind of stuff. Some slight changes is basically in Departed. So, but if you didn't know, this is actually, I think, a really good way to do it. That like give us all the information we need so we can actually follow these characters and why. And I love that what was different about this one is that, like the Tony Leung character, right off the bat, we get that he's been embedded in the gang for years.
10 years.
Dude, right? I mean, that's like, dude, no wonder shit's weighing on this guy. Like he's had to deal with this stuff and nobody knows who he is, and he's got to do all this awful shit, and it's obviously getting worse and worse because one of the opening early scenes is about him. Dude, are you, what are you doing? Like, are you going to keep murdering, or not murder, but like doing all the bad stuff? So I thought that was super interesting and a cool way to start it off.
Yeah. Yeah. Both like the dope actors too, man. Dude, right? Like Andy Lau, like there's like several Andy Lau movies I've got that I kind of forgot about. They're like in my DVD collection, but I can't remember. He was also in As Tears Go By with Wong Kar-wai.
Seen that, man? I'm trying to think of like what I don't remember seeing.
I forget. He was in Hero 2, wasn't he? No, maybe he wasn't. He was in another one. House Flying Daggers. I just feel like I remember a time where I was watching a lot of like Andy Lau movies.
Running out of time, and all the Infernal Affairs, obviously. Jackie Chan's. Oh, that's what. I don't know. Other movies. Folks, correct us, please, somewhere.
That's all right.
My bad. Okay. I'm not seeing them here.
Yeah, and to your point, they do hit those kind of key
scenes, man. All the info you need.
Points. And It's funny though how much quicker this is than The Departed. Because The
for real.
Departed is, I think, at least 2 hours, probably more. This is like an hour 40.
And Scorsese is like not a guy. His 2.5, 3 hour movies always feel like they're running at breakneck speed. This one is totally efficient, and I actually really appreciated the structure. That's one of the things I actually thought was awesome about this, the way they structured it.
Yeah,
so differently than what The Departed does, and it makes sense. Like you want to get to the stuff that's the most interesting and where our characters. One of the things you hear in writing all the time is when you're writing a character's intro or how you're getting to know a character, write the most interesting day they've ever had. And they really get to like, okay, this is the most interesting things that are happening in these characters' lives. You're automatically jumped into drug deals and things like, I mean, stuff is already happening, which I think is a really good way. They're already about to, they've been trying to get this gang for years at this point, you know? So super interesting, super good way of writing it and shooting it.
Yeah.
So I saw City of God in theaters, and I really felt like there was an influence on that in this film, or at least that they had similar approaches where they're trying to create an entertaining way, an engaging way to tell these juxtaposition stories, you know? And I just appreciate it. The juggling that goes, it cuts back and forth at all the right times. You always go to where you need to be at the right time. It doesn't feel like anything's forced. And that really gets established at the beginning where we're getting all of their, you know, you see how the Andy Lau, not the Andy Lau, the other cop. Oh, is that Andy Lau?
Andy Lau is the mole in the police department.
Yeah, okay, so that's okay. So Andy Lau, like how he's almost living the high life, you know? He's everything is going his way.
Yeah, he's got like a partner or wife or whatever. He's got this nice pad.
Nice place.
Buying this nice stereo.
He's always dressed nicely. He's always looking good, you know?
Playing golf on rooftops or whatever. He's like getting promotions.
When we told Luke, he's already in a cast. Like he's already, shit's already going bad for this poor guy. So, you know, those are interesting character traits you can do just by showing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, we'll talk about that. Super cool. Like we jump into a Sting almost like within the first 20 minutes.
Yeah. And in The Departed, I guess we're going to just keep going back and forth.
It's
That's
tough.
fine.
It's tough not to, right?
So like it takes a while to get to that moment. I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, we got to this whole part quick. And that's because in this movie, they do in a montage, which I think is really well done of them coming up through the gang and the police department. Whereas that was like the entire first act of Scorsese's film.
Because you get to meet some people that are important to Scorsese's film, and in this one are not as important to the plot. So
but man, that's a good moment. Like the whole Morse code thing.
Oh, dude,
and like
so cool.
Going into a different room and getting on the phone and like, oh, I'm not going to be there for like all the code talking. And
so I like the Sam character as the leader of the boss, right? The boss of the king. And I like the way that he doesn't seem fazed by it. He feels like he is omnipotent, like he's untouchable type of thing.
He's been through this before.
And so he has no problem saying what he's going to say. He's literally got an earpiece in his ear, like listening to the communication going on that's happening between all this stuff. And you see that the Andy Lau character is he's feeding him all the information, but Tony Leung is doing Morse code on the window. You got this ancient, what am I doing with this ancient device? Trying to get and they're coordinating all the stuff that's happening. That there are boats coming in, and all that kind of stuff, and it's really well paced,
It's really good. Yeah, really well paced and really good tension, especially with like Andy Lau being in there and like being the one in charge of like, oh, we're going to like find out whose phone it is and all that. And always, just kind of glancing up and seeing that like, oh, the chief like put on a separate earpiece.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he's listening
to
his
own guy.
Watching for these details and the phone ringing, but it was like other cop goes and answers it. And at this point, you don't really know or really put together necessarily that, oh, like, is he a part of it? Is he not? Turns out, but yeah.
You saw Departed first, right? Before you saw this? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So knowing what's going to happen or what presumably is going to happen, I don't think it really takes away from like the tension that like, because it's the way it's shot and edited, it really works the whole thing. And this is where I think the film becomes a bit timeless, where it's like, they're using ancient technology like Morse code instead of like the fancy phones they got going and stuff. I thought it was actually really smart to like, that's another way to help keep your film a little bit more timeless, I think, by using just little bits like that. And we get we get this drug deal that's about to happen on the docks, and is this where does he call and say I'm going to be late to dinner at this point? Like where he
it was before that. It was when they were on the way.
It was when they were on the way. Yeah. So just using the way that the character, which gets homaged in Scorsese's film, but like just the way that he's so calmly and so like collected. No wonder nobody ever suspected him because he's always in the right positions to say the least. But he has the demeanor and the language to talk like somebody who has nothing to hide type of thing. So because the chief guy is trying to do everything. Don't use your cell phones in here. Nobody's talking to anybody. Like he is trying to do his best to keep it on lockdown, but when you've got the wrong guy in all the right spots, tough to do that. So.
Yeah, and he was like, wasn't he texting him through the computer or something,
exactly.
right?
Sending a message in that way. So,
and there's that great moment too when he tells him, he's like, "Yo, there's a mole in here." And then when Sam is just kind of like looking around the room, like all his guys, like it's just so.
Well, then he starts questioning him, and that's when he breaks the dude's cast.
Yeah,
he's like, oh man, you're just like, dude, brutal. So
yeah, that's a good moment, man. He has a really good presence about him, that actor, and the way he plays that. Like, I completely buy him being dangerous, and we don't see him do much dangerous shit. It's like, if you think to The Departed, one of the great Jack Nicholson roles, like probably is like his last great role, maybe
possible.
And I love seeing
about Schmidt, but nobody's ever seen that film. But yeah, go ahead.
And he turns on a crazy ass performance, but it's expected as Jack Nicholson. I remember that scene where he's like talking to Leo and he's got like a hand
in a bag,
and little things like that to show like how dangerous this guy can be and just the way he is when he walks around. But this and not knowing him is like a Jack Nicholson
you don't know
type,
him,
like and without showing much, I don't know. There's just something about him that whether it's well written or just really well performed that I completely buy him.
Same here.
And he feels scary. Like, even though we don't see him do much, like maybe it's the way that people act around him. I don't know.
No, that's what tripped it for me was how smart he was. He's actually like, he knows all these moves. Yeah. And so he has a very thought out plan that seems to have some intelligence. It's not just dudes winging it, Right. Because they've got, a couple of the armed guards are not the smart, I don't act like the smartest people, So as we move ahead, like, this bust goes bad on the beach. Throw it in the water because they're catching, they're moving in on them. They see dope on the, they see the dope for what they capture them all. And it sets up a really interesting scene in the police station.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
That's a good moment.
This is the moment where I'm like, oh dude, this guy's for real because like he is eating fast food and, doesn't seem like he has a care in the world. These guys have just been arrested.
And all his guys are just standing behind him.
Man. So like, oh, this is, dude, what a way to do this.
That is a great scene with him and the chief and that little
and the chief is playing it great too. Like he's not putting his he's not putting his cards out there. He seems like he's calm and like just two people knowing where they're at with the situation. I thought it was really super cool.
I know you have a mole. I know you have a mole.
We know each other's play out here.
Yeah. What does he say when he says something and he gets pissed off and like throws the food everywhere? What was that line?
He tells a story about oh God, what's the story? There's a story about somebody who gets, oh God, I totally drawn a blank on this. He tells a story, a parable, and there's one guy, and basically he's going to kill the guy. He's going to be the dead guy, the dead rat, or God, what was it? Oh shit! Can you cut to that right now in the podcast? But he tells a parable that basically says you're going to be the guy who's dead at the end of this. Yeah. The chief tells the guy, and that's what pisses him off. Yeah. Like fuck you, and throws his food everywhere, and the whole thing. So
and then they just walk out.
and nobody gets arrested. Nobody, everyone goes on.
Stuck there.
They couldn't find any of the dope. I guess they threw it all in the water or whatever. So, and that moves us forward to what's next. What's going to be the next thing? The Andy Lau character gets reassigned to Internal Affairs.
Yeah. So now he's got more access.
More access to every freaking thing. And not surprising, Tony Lude loses his mind doing all these things. Yeah. This got to be my last one. I want to be. This was supposed to be his last one. And then it's not his last one.
You told me 3 years, and it was another 3. Now I've been in here for 10 years.
Dude, it's so brutal.
It's crazy how there's people that do that. Like undercover cops.
I can't imagine. What a wild. And at some point, if you're undercover for 10 years, how much are you contributing to the crime as opposed to,
like
that's the part that's never, I'm not somebody in law enforcement, so I have no idea what it's like. But that part, I mean, it's gotta weigh on you, right?
I wonder if people even do it that long, if that's real. Because at that point, it's like, are you even a cop anymore? You know what I mean? Like, how are you not just what you're trying to fight against? If that's what you're doing. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I totally agree, man. I don't know, right? I'm sure the characters are supposed to have some of that internal strife in this film. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's supposed to be part of like, what am I even doing out here at this point?
Annie Lau and the Sam are kind of talking, and they're like really getting in deep. Like, all right, well, you got to find this guy.
Yeah, how do we
you
go?
You got to find your guy too. He's like, give me all the info. I'll run it through. We'll smoke them out. And I like how when all the gangsters are talking, it's like, oh, I guess it's something to do with our like retirement. I don't remember what they said, but he's like, he just wants all our names, address, all our stuff to set up, I guess. But that's when we get that important moment of him writing on that folder.
How do you spell
bodyguard?
Bodyguard. That's right. Yeah.
And they're gonna, turn it in, and we get the great, meeting at the movie theater. All of them are there, and he almost catches them, and the tapping on the leg, and
cell phone rings, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's really interesting. He's shot and done, and you're getting close. And what happens when they get close? Like that's the thing too. If like they discover each other's identity, what do they do at that point? Yeah, like it's so interesting. Like what's the next step after that? You don't even know. That's like I think that's such a cool device in the film to set it up that way. Like you don't know what's going to happen, even if they find that. Are they going to kill each other? Like I mean, how do they resolve that? Yeah. So then we start to set up. They're gonna try to smoke them out, right? Try to smoke them out. Try to find out who's the identity and get rid of them. And is this where we set up the what's going to happen to the captain, the chief?
I think pretty much, yeah. Like we get into that whole.
This movie plays so fast. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember when he goes to therapy. I think the first meeting with the therapist is after this. No, it's before this. The first meeting with the therapist must be before this because he does go to therapy and he tells her he's a cop and he tries to confide in Andy Lau's significant other, very similar to the way Departed set up. And you get some real interesting. He wants to think of himself as a good guy, but he's struggling with thinking of himself as a good guy. So the same thing we're kind of thinking as the audience, he's actually going through internally, which I thought was kind of interesting, little moment to have on that.
Yeah.
And you're right. So this is where, what's the chief's name? I feel bad that we don't know the character's name because I thought that was a really well done part as well.
For sure.
Superintendent Wang Chi-shing is played by Anthony Wong. And I think this guy does a great job. They're connecting one more time, and this is going to be it. This is going to be the last time. We're going to figure this thing out. And they're meeting at some building. I don't even know why they end up in that building. I guess and he's got a tail on him from Andy Lau's character. And
so that he can figure out
what's going on. Yeah. So nobody gets up to the roof except for the chief, the superintendent. And that sets up where everyone gets called. Literally everyone, all the gang members get called.
Everyone shows up.
All the cops show up. Does not go very well.
Yeah, yeah. Tony barely gets out of there in time, and it's before that is that great conversation with the other two dudes about like, oh, anyone who looks like they're doing something else, but they're watching you as a cop, and they're looking around, and it's literally everybody is like, everyone's a cop. Yeah, it's a cop. But yeah, we get the shootout. That is a great scene when he like just walks out and the body just hits the car, man.
It hits really hard in Departed too, I thought. This one does it just as effectively where it's like, fuck.
It's interesting though, because I think about the editing in both of them because I remember the Departed shows the body like coming down by the side of the building, right?
Yeah.
Whereas here, you know that in the elevator they caught him. We see that. But we do not expect, if you're seeing this for the first time, because we don't get any extra shot. No. He just walks out the door.
But that hand through the elevator, by the way, it's like at the very last second. The hand through the elevator. Oh,
that was a great moment.
Dude, great moment.
You think he got out.
You think he got out, right? Yeah. And in this film, because I hadn't seen it yet. Oh, maybe it does. Maybe, come on, help me out. Nope, not a chance.
It's so great. And it goes into that slow motion when they open it up.
I was reading something about this, and I'm not too familiar. There are certain things in Hong Kong that they can only show a certain amount of violence and stuff like that. So it's interesting the way that some of the shootout happens. And my understanding is in Hong Kong, there's not a lot of shootings. Like that's a really serious thing.
Yeah.
So like the fact that this is happening on the street, they make a big deal about it in the film, like as it gets reported on after the fact and everything. I really appreciated that it was like, there was a huge and serious weight. This is one of those little early 2000s things where I thought it was a little montagey after this, after we, we understand that he's going to be struggling with this, but this is where they did the flashback with the music. And I'm like, I'm not sure I needed that extra, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to chalk it up to that's the way, that was the language of film in the early 2000s, right? So, but it definitely has weight to it. And I appreciate that it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal that, losing an officer this way and everything like that with the gangs, even at this point, this is where Andy Lau's character is kind of crossed the line with this one. And so one thing I love about this film is I feel like they've left it a bit ambiguous how bad or good his character is. He's definitely helping people do really bad shit. But this is one of those moments where, like, is he really turning as a character? I started to get that feeling. I started to question if he's all bad or if he's going to change. That
is something that really works in this movie that I don't remember. I haven't seen Departed in a while, but I don't remember, and maybe this just didn't hit me at the time, but I don't remember this being as much sticking out to me as much. Where here, exactly to what you're saying, it's like you really get the sense that, like, well, he is kind of an actual cop. Like, he wants to do good, and that's why he decides. I mean, I'm going to jump, but that's why he decides to kill Sam at the end. It's like, I'm just going to free myself of this.
Maybe try to make right a situation.
I've got a lady. I'm getting promoted. I'm doing all this. I'm
Life
making
is
money.
Pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, like, why would I even do any of that other stuff? You know what I mean? So I feel like it's purely motivated by him wanting to feel that, to do that. And that's, I guess, why
my opinion of remembering Matt Damon's character in Departed was that he wanted to do right by his father. Like, that was his redeeming quality, but that was about it. Every moment he seems to be helping out the boss and the crime and all that kind of stuff. This one, I love the fact that it left it ambiguous, at least in my opinion. I thought it was ambiguous. I may be misreading it. Once again, this is one of those things where, not knowing the language, I'm not quite sure the inflections and stuff, that certain things that are said. But my take on it, excuse me, was that, like, I think he's having not regrets, but a little like, you crossed the line. He called him out on it.
Yeah. Now the rest of the department is, like, not really feeling him.
Because
they're like, why did you even have a tail on him?
Yeah, you're the one responsible. He gets yelled at by everyone, and like, they call him out. Like, they don't question that he has anything to do with the mole or anything like that. They're saying you fucked up big time. So everyone's yelling at him. They bring in a special investigation unit and all that kind of stuff. So, and
then he quickly becomes the hero once they get rid of Sam and that whole situation. When he comes in, everyone's staring at him. Then they start clapping.
Yeah,
and Tony's waiting in the office, because I believe that he was going to let him go and do the thing, but once he realized that Tony knew who he was, he knew he had to get rid of him somehow.
He had to get rid of him, And that's the part where I'm like, okay, he is not the most redeemable character. He still makes some bad decisions.
He's selfish.
He's selfish. He's absolutely selfish, so. And the way, man, it's brutal to see it happen the way, because at some point you're hoping Tony Leung has a way out. You're trying to find a way out for him, but it's almost inevitable the way that his path continues down, because there's literally nobody who knows who he is, right?
Yeah.
And at some point he's going to finally come forward, and he has to find somebody who might remember him or anything, that of who he is. So that's a similar beat in Departed. So it's not something that we didn't know, but his acting in it is so good. Like, you can see it on his face, the way he presents himself and everything. That's why I really appreciated his performance in this film. Like, you can feel the weight of everything he's kind of had to go through in a short amount of time, even though he's been doing it for 10 years, but in the film's for time period.
That whole elevator scene too, dude, like, still hits hard.
Yeah, it really does, man.
Like, I'll never forget the first time watching The Departed, man, when that happened, and I was like, what?
Yeah. What is going on?
Like,
yeah.
How? Why? And then even this, like, seeing it again, I'm like, you just really don't want it to go down that way. And then how scummy Andy Lau is, or just, again, being selfish when the other dude's explaining it to him, like, oh yeah, I've been a part of this too, and all that, and get pretty smart, huh? And gives them the gun, and and I like that they don't show it in this one, like in Scorsese's movie,
Yeah,
they
they
show
show
it,
it,
which
yeah.
I dig. But here,
Nope.
I love that they're just in the elevator and it's a shot from the elevator shaft and you just hear the shots and like the holes.
Yep.
Why they're shooting up doesn't make sense, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
Like that's literally all that is.
Yeah.
And then because when those elevator doors open and all the cops are there, you know, you're seeing this movie
Yeah.
for the first time. You don't know who's walking out of there.
No.
You know,
And
you don't know.
I love how it like ups the ante and up the stakes, like that there's another mole inside of the cops, just like there's another mole inside of the gang where we lost the guys.
It was
the
like Kyung,
the other
Kyung or
body,
something,
the other
yeah.
bodyguard who
And that's the thing. Was he actually a cop, or did they just say that to
he says he's a
get
cop.
him off the till?
So
When
that's
did-
so
when did
he didn't
that,
say it
though?
explicitly. He tells him, oh God, he says it in a story to Tony Leung's character. That and we get a shot of
right
Tony
before
Leung
he dies.
right before he dies, that he realizes that guy's a cop too. At least that's what he claims. God, what's the story? I'm totally drawing a blank on the language, but he actually infers that he was a cop. So he's the one who actually says it. He tells Tony Leung's character a story about, God, what does he say? Oh, he says, if you don't look at him, I must be a cop because I'm not looking at you or something like that. He says that in the car.
Well, didn't he just say, just remember that if they're pretending? Yeah, he says the same thing.
If they're
but-
pretending to be a cop, they must be, if not to be a cop, they must be a cop.
So the subtext is that.
That was my take on it. Maybe I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, in Departed, it makes it abundantly.
They made it very- I remember they made it very clear.
I'm working for so and so, but
Well, he didn't say it out loud in that one.
Didn't
too,
he say
though.
it?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I don't
God.
think he said it outright.
oh shit, Bob, I totally forgot.
But it was
Yeah.
a similar scene.
similar
right?
scene, yeah.
He may have said the same exact line in this movie though, because they have that same exact
Yeah, the same
conversation.
thing. I guess that's a good point. There is some ambiguity. Let's say we'll agree there's some ambiguity behind it, but like it feels like there's all these other forces at play. It's not just these two people who are dealing with this, and I really feel like that ups the ante or up the stakes for how the hell where does this end? Does it end in everyone dying? I mean, what's the which in this term, that's one thing I actually liked about this film. It didn't end that way. I mean, most people die, but not in Scorsese. Like literally everybody gets bumped off. You know, so like I think that was kind of an interesting upping of the stakes there. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah. I mean, he ends up, I guess, for the rest of this movie living happily ever after.
Yeah, right?
Which is like quite a departure from The Departed. And man, they're having that funeral for him.
Oh,
Luckily, they gave him an honorable funeral,
Totally.
because they got like, I guess, some sort of evidence that he was undercover. So that's nice. He had a police officer's funeral, but man, you hate to see him go.
It's such when I saw Departed, I just thought that this was kind of something I hadn't seen before, and I assume when this film first, because it was very well received when it came out. It did really well in Hong Kong, in China, I should say. And then when they actually did have a limited release in the States, I didn't realize that. But
oh, really?
So it was reviewed by a lot of American critics and very well reviewed by the American critics that saw it too. For that reason, they're like, we just hadn't kind of seen this dichotomy, and where it's like, a lot of the bad people gets what's coming to them, and then some of the good people do. All these different things that at play that you don't always necessarily get to see in the same type of film. So I thought that was it's interesting to see who makes it out and who doesn't.
Yeah, it's just a good story, man. Like I was watching it and thinking, like, man, yeah, this is one of those just like good ideas.
I'll watch it again because I'm like, it feels like it goes by in no time. And I'm one of the things I took away from them, I'm like, what are you trying to say that Andy Lau's character is the person who gets to live through this? Like, what is that? What are you trying to say? I asked myself that question. I didn't come to an answer to it, but I want to take it in again, just to say like that, what's it saying that that's the person who gets to live through this? It's not the chief. It's not the cop who was undercover. It's not one of our quote unquote good heroes.
And for what we see, he still has his job. Everything's all good. But clearly he's at some odds with his lady because Tony brought the tape there. So she saw that. So she knows some shit. She knows what's up. But again, like you do get this, you get more of a sense in this movie than the Departed, where it's like, all right, well, he wants to turn there. Like he wants to be good.
That's one of the things he did too. He says, regardless of what happens, he tells his lady, turn it in, turn in the evidence about Tony Leung's character. I forgot about that. So that's another thing that he does, where it's like, it kind of indicates he's kind of a good person, or I'm sorry, he's wanting to do so. I shouldn't say he's a good person. He's trying to do some right. Yeah. And so I thought that would made the character actually a little bit more interesting than Matt Damon's character, which, by the way, love all the Departed, really do. But I thought that added a little interesting dimension to that character. So
lots of spice on this one, man.
This is the last one. Let's see how it's opened up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're not kidding. Oh, dude, a lot more spice. That's wacky.
Not much more sweetness, but more spice.
Losing his breath.
Yeah, man. I don't know. It like really got me. That's good though. Yeah, man. Hardin's Creek. Damn.
I think
It's going to be interesting to see what they do for 2024.
I'm curious so are you going to do a blind tasting when you put them all together, or how are you going to do it?
I don't think I'm going to blind them.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to blind them. I'm just going to do them side by side to like really see. From what I remember going off memory, I remember Claremont being mostly on the sweeter end. I'll have to listen back to those podcasts.
Yeah, right.
Mostly on the sweeter end. And then Frankfurt having a little more like spice and maybe a little more like a smoke quality, just a little bit. I don't remember what movie we did that for, but and then this one is maybe a little more woody, but now that it's out of my glass, like even maybe the spiciest one. So Claremont or Frankfurt might be my favorite if I'm just going off memory.
It sounds like that's why they've made them. They want you to put them next to each other and see what the differences are.
That was the whole idea for sure, is like seeing literally the same exact juice, just aged in 3 different locations. So
it seems like it's made for people like who want to do those type of things. So I think that's actually really cool.
It's great marketing.
It really is.
Because it's literally a check. Oh, my headphones just went out. That's fine. Check 1 2. It's great marketing. Because it's literally like, you have to buy them all. You gotta.
Yeah.
You know? So they got me. But they produce good stuff. Like Hardin's Creek is my favorite of the of all the like really high age stuff I've tried. I mean, this is my favorite stuff for sure.
What's the year in this again? What did you say it was?
17.
17, okay.
But they love to put it in months. So it says 204 months. I don't know
Fancy.
why. Yeah. Looks nice though. Yeah. But 17-year-old. Yeah, man. I wonder what they're going to do for 2024 and how many bottles of it they're going to do.
I mean, that's the thing. Was this marked up or did you get it at MSRP, if you don't mind me asking?
This is the only one I got a little bit above SRP.
Okay.
The other two I got at SRP.
Okay.
This one was just a little more. So it was still worth it for what it is. And this one was becoming the hardest to find too. So when I saw it, I was like, well, I have to get this right now.
That's when you see it, you got to grab it.
Yeah, but I will literally, if something really good happens to me, which is unlikely, and I get like some really dope job coming up or like massive payout, I'm for sure going to buy like a backup bottle of probably Frankfurt if they still have it.
Yeah.
Like I'll literally buy a backup of any of these 3 because they're
really good. I have not disappointed at all. I've enjoyed each one of these.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah. And all 3 of them are in my infinity bottle. So
there you go, man.
But yeah, dang, Infernal Affairs.
Good movie. Good.
Yeah. So I got inspired to do this because it's been on the list of movies I've wanted to cover since I've started the podcast, even though I haven't seen it in years. And what was it, last year or several months ago? Criterion released. So Criterion put out the Blu-ray of the trilogy. And the last, like the July 50% off sale, I was like, yup, got it.
They look so good too, by the way. I want both of these watching like a Criterion. They just look great. The transfers are awesome.
Yeah. So I was like, so now I got to do the trilogy because I haven't watched them in a long time. And I remember liking the other 2. 2 is a prequel.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So it's them, like the actors that play them when they're young.
Yeah.
So it's those actors and
cool.
it's them when they're like first starting.
Yeah.
So you get like them coming up and how like he gets to work with Sam and blah, blah, blah. And the third one is a little bit of both because it's the aftermath. So you're seeing like what happens to Andy Lau's character after all this.
Okay.
So I don't remember it that well. I remember how it ends. I thought the ending was really nice. The way it like, just the way they ended it, I thought was really cool. But I don't remember exactly what happens to him. But it is interesting because, we're comparing it to The Departed and what happens with Matt Damon. And you were even talking about like, it's weird because he's the one who gets to survive through all this. Right. But then the third movie, like that's why. So we'll see like, where does that put him? And so it's like a prequel and a sequel because it's his aftermath. But it also cuts back and forth between like Tony Leung and the events prior to the first movie.
I love the fact that this movie like never loses your attention. And I think it's a really good example of like how to be entertaining and tell what could be a complicated story at the same time. So we talked about in Memories of Murder, where there's some depth and you can really, some of these things hit you and you start questioning yourself. This movie doesn't necessarily do that. At the same time, like, it's just so entertaining. It makes me want to watch it again because it's just like, it's such a quick, less than 2 hours and such efficient. And it's this is what you can do with film. You know, you can be this entertaining and have this kind of interest and so many different things going on in a short amount of time. It's just really impressive seeing it all put together in one film.
Yeah, definitely. Well, shit, that's all I got for this one, man. Yeah.
Good times.
All right. Yeah, someday we'll cover the other two. See what happens. All right. Anyway, that's a wrap. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Drinks in a Movie podcast. You can now find us on Instagram at Drinks in a Movie Pod, where we'll be posting photos from all the various films that we discuss. You can also email us at drinksinamoviepod@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and thank you for listening.